Elon, I don't think you've met Dean yet. Elon Musk, meet entrepreneur Dean Phillips, also a presidential candidate, now running, I think, at about 26% in New Hampshire. Elon Dean is under the age of 80. He's run, he ran Belvedere vodka. I think we might have popped a bottle of
Sure.
Belvedere vodka back in the day. And he also ran the delicious Talenti gelato company. So he's an entrepreneur. He's under 80, and he's a moderate, and has the backing of Bill and myself now, I think, in this election. So maybe your thoughts today just on 2024 DEI, Martin Luther King Day, everything, Elon.
Well, first of all, I agree with the positive attributes that you listed. I think there's definitely something to be said for all of those things. And I agree with what Bill Ackman said about DEI. We really want to, in order for America to be the land of opportunity, we have to be a merit-based society. The moment we let go of being a merit-based society, we are no longer the land of opportunity, and that is very important to appreciate. So I came to this country with nothing. Actually, it just ended up with a ton of student debt, and have had some success. So, I think, and this is true of many people. And I think there's perhaps sometimes a misunderstanding or lack of appreciation that when kids are born into comfort, that lack of adversity is actually a liability for them. It is not the case that a lack of adversity makes them motivated. It tends to decrease motivation. So the reason they had the sort of lords and peasants in most societies, and still, some cases still have it, was in order to preserve the power of the kids who were not as capable as their parents. And they wanted to have in America a place where you could prosper and succeed based upon your merits, based upon your skills and hard work. That is extremely important. So I just want to emphasize it is not the case that being born into prosperity is a path to success, and again, it's very often not a path to success. You have to say how many second and third generations of those who were very successful are themselves successful. They are the exception, not the norm.
Yeah, I think we've seen that firsthand in our circles, and just the people who tend to in entrepreneurship drive results are the ones who come from a lot of adversity. And my gosh, Silicon Valley gets a pretty gets criticized a whole lot, but just watching who has run to the positions of power, in many cases, immigrants, kids of immigrants, and people who started with nothing. I think moving on to this election, Dean, I was wondering if you could give us an idea of what it's like to be running in the Democratic Party and what you're seeing, in the streets of New Hampshire, what you're getting from the electorate in terms of their choice. And a lot of us who are lifelong Democrats, actually, Elon, most people don't know this, I think has been let me speak for himself, but I'm pretty sure a lifelong Democrat.
Certainly I aspire to be a lifelong independent.
Yes.
But for practical purposes, I have for most of my life been a Democrat. Now, I do believe that one should consider both parties. And so I sort of favor independence of thought, that you shouldn't just vote for a candidate because of a particular political party. I think you should vote for a candidate on the merits of the candidate, and be open, at least occasionally, to voting for a candidate of the other party.
Yeah.
But yes, I would say lifelong Democrat can mean that you will vote for a Democrat no matter what, and that is certainly not the case for me. But I have objectively, voted for Democrats the vast majority of my life. Yes.
Yeah. And so, Dean, when you look at the feedback you're getting on the choices, people, I think overwhelmingly in America, are not interested in a rematch of the
That's
last
an
election,
understatement.
and maybe yeah, and we're in fact looking for maybe moderates, not lunatics on either side of the fringe, and maybe some normalcy and competency in the White House. But you've had a heck of a time getting on
Yeah.
the ballots, so maybe you could talk a little bit about the ballot issue being blocked by the Democratic Party, which we thought was hopefully going to be incredibly democratic, and then just why you're breaking ranks and now the most hated man in the Democratic Party for criticizing Biden running at his
So,
advantage.
there's actually there's an interesting analogy here because in my business life, uh, my father, my partners, Steve Gill, Josh Hochschuler, others, we provided antidotes to duopolies. When it was vodka, it was Absolute and Stolichnaya, and we introduced Belvedere. When it was ice cream, it was Ben and Jerry's and Haagen-Dazs. We introduced Talenti. And it is the analogy of politics. We have Democrats and Republicans. And the truth is, it's great to be an independent in America until you run for office, because the system is designed to prevent the success of independents, free thinkers, people who might have some views on the left, some on the right. In fact, it was George Washington that warned us in his farewell address so long ago that he believed that the great risk to this country would be in the development of factions, which is exactly what we're facing right now. So that is the system in which I now operate. That I wish to disrupt in the same way I did to the other categories. And to the extent that you, everybody listening, wishes to join me, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, Independent. By the way, more independents in America far more, in fact, now than Democrats and Republicans. That's ultimately my mission, because the truth is both parties are participating in the erosion of democracy right now. On January 6th, I will say that it was an effort to prevent the counting of ballots. I was there in the chamber that day. I felt it. You all watched on TV. It was horrific. Democrats now in the state of Florida, in the state of North Carolina, have literally decided that Joe Biden won the primary. There need not be a competition, and they will submit his name and all the delegates to the convention in Chicago next year without even an election. Democrats have no chance to vote. The state of New Hampshire, where I am right now, you guys, it's even more appalling. The Democratic National Committee decided to take a 103-year-old extraordinary practice of democracy, transfer it to South Carolina. And that means that any candidate on the ballot here, including me, is not going to get any delegates, no matter how well we do. In fact, it's so atrocious that the Democratic National Committee sent a letter to the New Hampshire Democrats last week saying that this is a meaningless effort. It is not an election, and they should stand down, which got a response from the state of New Hampshire. Listen to this. The state of New Hampshire sent a cease and desist to the Democratic National Committee just days ago for the, quote, unlawful suppression of voters. Now, I don't think most people listening probably even are aware of this, but these are the truths. And I'm on it's insane. And it's wrong. It is just as significant of an erosion of democracy as the effort to, now, one was violent and a mob and a riot, of course, and it was horrifying. But the behind-the-scenes effort to essentially disenfranchise Americans is just as dangerous. And I'm going to make that case to you guys. I'm a proud Democrat. I'm trying to, at least in a last-ditch effort, to restore the principles of democracy through the Democratic Party. That's why I'm running. And the coronation of a candidate, in this case, Joe Biden, who is unelectable, every single poll, his approval numbers, intuition, we all know why. The coronation of a candidate is exactly the opposite, is antithetical to what this country was founded on. So what I'm seeing, you guys, is actually joyful. I've been campaigning around the country, and it is the most beautiful, patriotic, inspiring, and reinvigorating experience you could possibly imagine. If you guys, your families want to come along for a couple of days, I'm telling you, anybody listening, come along. If you want to restore your faith in this country, join me in talking to Trump supporters, to far left liberals, to libertarians. It is a beautiful, remarkable experience. And Angertainment, which I consider the evening cable, opinion news talkers, would have us believe that we're so much more divided than we really are. And I'm pretty appalled when I hear people say, shame on you for even appearing right now with those three guys on Twitter or on X. I'm sorry, forgive me. Elon, don't hold me accountable for that. Sorry. I'm sure, I bet you do it once in a while.
Whatever. I'm not, not how to
Okay,
overrun it.
you understand.
It's just I was just trying to broaden the platform beyond the original premise of short text messages, which is like a
So
tweet.
that's my whole case is this, guys. I love
Thank you,
conversation.
Elon. I can never do my long text
Yeah.
without that change.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's all, guys, what I love about this is we need debate, we need deliberation. In business, I was taught
Well,
that if two people always agree, you only need one of them. We need to celebrate difference. I just want to close with this, Jason. Going back to
yeah,
what you start and what Elon said as well. Two things can be true at once. We should be a meritocracy, but we should also ensure that everybody can participate in that meritocracy. And I think we can all agree on that. And that's, to me, the grand solution for our country is to do just that. There has been injustice. We can correct it. And we can correct it for everybody so that everybody participates. What a beautiful outcome. I got to tell you guys, Joe Biden and Donald Trump are not going to be the guys that can even dream about that, let alone execute it. They aren't prepared for AI. They don't understand what is forthcoming, what we can do, and how we can do it. And that's why I'm running. And I got to tell you, it's the most extraordinary and fun experience of my life. And I hope people can come out and join me because it's reinvigorating.
so Bill Ackman, I'm curious your position on just what's happening in the Democratic Party. Obviously, I think you've been a donor, and obviously you get courted by them. What is your best thinking, handicapping of what the Democratic Party is doing by not having debates and putting up a candidate that is so unpopular and that is, I think you've said this, has no chance of winning. And then what do you think of this Democratic Party machine blocking the debates and blocking the ballots?
I think it's an embarrassment to our country, and I'm ashamed. I know some very high quality people that I have good relationships with. Senator Schumer, who I have enormous respect for, is a good man, and I can't imagine his being sort of part of it. I think the original premise was, well, quote unquote, the only person who can beat Donald Trump is President Biden, so we got to stick by President Biden. And I think that was the original logic behind putting up Biden, the candidate, because they didn't see anyone, a logical person they felt that could be competitive with Trump. Now that as Biden falls further and further behind in the polls, as his health and cognitive health, sort of obviously deteriorates, I think there's got to be grave concern. But all of that being said, I think it's a bit like we go back to The Emperor's New Clothes, with the childhood book. No one wants to say the emperor has no clothes. And I give Dean a lot of credit for saying that, because again, if you step out of line, unfortunately, most people in Washington, being a politician is a career. It's a source of income. It's their business. And they can't risk not getting reelected, right? So if you challenge the king, you're toast. And there goes your career, right? It always comes back to incentives, in my view, drive all human behavior. Look at the incentives of the people, most of the people larger in the Congress. I mean, Dean has the benefit of, he's a super talented entrepreneur. He can go right back to that anytime he wants. He's made some money, so he's safe. He doesn't need the job. And therefore, he's unfortunately one of the few people, or I would say fortunately, he's one of the few people who can step into this race. But I think everyone else is, if the machine's against them, there's no chance of reelection. In the Congress, you got to get reelected every couple of years.
Bill's so right, you guys. And I got to say, one thing, another truth is that Congress is populated almost exclusively with people that have been brought up in the political world. All they know is a spirit of competition, winning the next election. And that's why incumbency is part of it's almost biblical in politics. The incumbent is always recoronated. Forget the data, forget the national mood, forget winning. It is just baked in. So the absence of entrepreneurial spirit and looking at this from a different perspective is staggering. And then to Bill's other point, I have been successful, and that means nobody can buy me, nobody can influence me. I will always make the right decision, but I won't make that decision until I hear from all perspectives on any issue. And as the only member of Congress, you guys, 535 people, I'm the only one that takes no PAC money of any kind. That means corporate or union or anything else, no special interest money. I don't take any lobbyist money. I don't take or give money to fellow members of Congress, because that's basically just money laundering. And I don't have a leadership PAC, which is basically just a politician's slush fund. I'm the only one out of 535 people. And people wonder why policies tend to favor only the wealthy and well-connected. Well, you got the farm industry that brings $300 million a year to Washington in the form of lobbying and in the form of campaign contributions, literally enriching the campaigns of the very people who are on the committees of jurisdiction for their industries. All it is legalized corruption, you guys. So I understand why people who support Donald Trump are angry and they're fed up and they're nauseated, because you know what? I've been on the inside now for 5 years, and I am too. So I appreciate those words from Bill, and he's spot on.
Yeah. I want to bring up a topic that's, being discussed on X every day, videos being shared, and it feels like it's a top, it might be the top topic of this election, which is the border. Elon, you're an immigrant who came to this country, again, with nothing. I think you seem to have done okay for yourself so far. Keep working.
I mean, so far so good,
Yes, well, keep at it.
Don't want to get
one day,
complacent.
Elon, you can make it too. One day. It's America.
I would say most of Elon's gains are paper gains, without question.
Yeah.
But what do you think, as an entrepreneur and an immigrant, Elon, a reasonable immigration strategy is? Because we have two groups that, on one side, there seems to be absolutely no border control. On the other side, hey, shut down the border. What would be a reasonable approach that you, as somebody who is an immigrant and who needs to get talented immigrants to work at SpaceX, to work at your companies, what would you do if they said, hey, Elon, you decide?
Well, first of all, I should say I'm very pro-immigrant, obviously being one myself. And you can just look at all the aces that have come to America and built incredible things to say, like, wow, it would be foolish if we had prevented them from coming, or if they had chosen not to come, because they've added so much value to the team. I mean, you can I think the right way to think about countries like a pro sports team. It's like, okay, you want to get the ace players on your team, and you certainly don't want to force them to fight against you on the other team. That's crazy. And if you add some ace players to the team, that's going to help you win the championship, and it helps the whole team. So I'm very much in favor of a greatly expanded legal immigration system, because right now it is the trying to get U.S. A green card or citizenship is a Byzantine, Kafkaesque, laborious, and just flat out wrong. It doesn't make it's an insane obstacle course to become a permanent resident and then a citizen, and it's limited to a very small number of people. So we really need to first of all fix that, and then secondly, we cannot have not merely an open border, but a border where the federal government is facilitating the transfer of vast numbers of people into the country, and even when, say, Texas tries to take action to enforce the law, the federal government is trying to stop them from doing so. There's like literally a federal lawsuit to stop Texas from actually enforcing the illegal immigration laws. And it's important to bear in mind that the United States is only 4 to 5% of the world population. So it's very easy for the United States to get swamped by illegal immigration, just absolutely swamped. If you're somewhere else and you say, like, okay, well, they're going to give free money, housing, and medical care to illegal immigrants, and and that exceeds the standard of living in half the world, then why doesn't half the world just move here? But certainly, as Bill said a moment ago, incentives drive behavior. Obviously, it'd be strange if they didn't. And so what we're seeing is that word is getting out, so that it's going viral, basically. Illegal immigration through the southern border is going viral. This is not a Mexico thing. Almost none of the people coming across are Mexican.
Yeah, and you visited. You saw it firsthand.
Yes.
And just so people know, this is being positioned, Bill, as some sort of a partisan issue. There was just a poll that came out this month. 75% of the country, 75% of Americans view what's happening at the border as a crisis or very serious. So I guess, Bill, I'll hand it to you. You heard Elon sort of
I just want to make one point. People do not just look at the graphs of the rate of growth of illegal immigration. It is going exponential. It is going to use a rocket ship analogy, it is a rocket ship of growth of illegal immigration because of social media. Everyone on earth knows this, and they all know and it is now an industry.
And the techniques for getting asylum are all being shared. So it's I think the amount of press on it has now given it a tipping point. Ackman, I'm curious, Bill, what your thoughts are on this and what's reasonable. I mean, you have countries, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the Nordics, say, are based on a point system, right? And they have specific number targets, which we don't have in this country. And then Dean, we'll go to you because I know you have a reasonable position on this. So Bill and then Dean.
So I totally agree with Elon on this. And my wife's company recruits, scientists from all over the world, and she generally gets them because they meet a very, very high standard for their backgrounds. But it's still a huge process. But the notion that one of my colleagues at work, he was married to a woman from South America. She's got 2 degrees, super capable, smart, makes a lot of money. And she still hasn't gotten her green card. Okay, and she's married, legitimate, everything else. It's a huge pain in the ass. And I think that speaks to it. But I'd love to take my time and turn it over to Dean. Actually, this is one of many, I thought, very thoughtful perspectives he had on a kind of a critical issue. And I agree. I think a very high percentage of the country we need a solution. But Dean,
thanks, Bill.
Lay out what your
I appreciate it. Well, let's start with the basics. Unless you are a descendant of enslaved people or indigenous Americans, all of us have an immigrant background. My foremothers and forefathers escaped pogroms in Eastern Europe in the late 19th century. Each of the 4 of us have stories of immigration. It's the most beautiful part of America. It's what made us the most remarkable country on earth. I think we can all agree on that. Our system is not just broken, it is so dysfunctional and so poorly managed, even with the laws we have in place. And back to management, we've not had a legitimate executive as president in a long, long time. The amount of time it takes, Bill, I spoke to your associate who's facing that problem. You won't believe this, but every single member of Congress will tell you the same thing. We are the de facto customer service departments for every federal agency, because they are not managed by managers. They're managed by politicians. They do not understand customer service. They have no reward system for customer service. It takes people months, sometimes years, to get an IRS check back, to get their green card processed. So even the law that's in place right now, if the law's in place right now, they're not even being well executed, which is the job of the executive. So my proposition is this. We should lower the barriers to entry to legal immigration. We should be welcoming, inviting, attracting, hospitable to people, with ideas and capital and want to be part of this extraordinary experience here. And just like you use that reference to a ball team or something, Elon, we should attract the stars, but we also need the support team, the people taking care of the field and preparing food and helping coach, and the bat boys and the bat girls and that's the whole beauty of America, right? So we all agree on that. So here's my proposition.
Actually, I should be clear. It's not just like attract the elites. I mean, I think it stands to reason that if I think anyone who is like honest, hardworking, I'd be in favor of if they're going to if they have high integrity, going to work hard and contribute to the economy and produce goods and services, that's going to be a plus. But that's
we're losing a lot of that talent.
I'm in favor of
we're losing it to Canada, and people are getting educated here. Then we actually lose that talent. And if I could just continue with my proposition, because I think we should lower the barriers to legal immigration and literally raise the barriers to illegal immigration. It's not rocket science. And I'm a Democrat who's telling you the truth. I've been to the southern border twice. I have seen the atrocity. It is inexcusable.
How much of this, Dean, is because Trump said we have to build a wall, and now Democrats are saying, I just don't want to give Trump a win and just say, you know what, he got something right. We have to close the southern border. Is that what happens in meetings amongst Democrats? Is that they're just scared of, this optics of giving Trump a win on it? Or is it something else? It's very confounding to Americans. The 75% who are looking at this saying, fix it, it's a crisis, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
Why you guys just won't
Well, I'll tell you,
fix it?
JCal, the first meeting I was invited by Donald Trump to the White House was in 2019, and it was about the border wall. And it was an experience right out of Saturday Night Live. We had about an hour together, about 8 of us, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. And I listened to him make his proposition because if you remember, he shut down the government because he didn't get the funding for his border wall. And during this discussion in the White House Situation Room, he remarked and he was flabbergasted that Congress wouldn't go along with just building a few hundred miles of border wall. And I actually interrupted and I said, Mr. President, a few hundred miles, this is proposed as from the Pacific to the Atlantic, a sea to shining sea kind of a medieval wall. And he says, no, it's just a few hundred. And I could tell his team immediately interrupted him because they didn't want the truth to be known because it had been a political proposition. We're going to build a wall. Now, and that's how things work, you guys.
It's not necessary. There's not necessary to have a wall
no,
in
and that's
because there's some places that have physical.
But there you go. That's a red herring,
guys.
exactly. And you guys, and this is the binary nature of this day and age, particularly in Washington. It's such a joke. You're either for or against. It's either good or bad. In this case, his proposition was a tiny portion. Yes, we need some barriers. Of course we do to prevent entry. But what he didn't talk about is the fact that our ports of entry are so archaic, the infrastructure so poorly designed for basically the mid-20th century, not for human beings and for commerce. When I was down there, I saw human beings in cages. I saw a line of a mile long of semi-trailer trucks waiting and baking in the heat because it's so slow and arduous to get across the border, and probably a half-mile long line of people who come across that border every day to work, to shop, to go to school. And this is the United States of America in the 21st century. It is appalling. So yes, we can have border security. We will have border security. By the way, not just at the southern border, but at the northern border. We are not long away, my friends, months or maybe years, from huge migration waves due to famine, due to war, due to lack of clean water, and we should be prepared. It's not inhumane. What we're doing now is the most inhumane. So here's my proposition. It's the asylum policy that is the source of this whole problem, and it is so fixable. Elon,
Absolutely.
you know this.
Very
we
important.
force people. Listen to what the United States is doing right now. We are forcing these people who wish to become Americans first to save about $10,000 per person, and then to make this arduous journey across the ultimately through the Rio Grande, where people literally drown. They pay the Mexican cartels $10,000 to be escorted across, enriching them, by the way, which is just nonsensical. They're processed by Border Patrol agents, then literally dumped in the streets of El Paso with not a penny in their pocket, don't speak the language, and cannot work. And now become the responsibility of cities that have no money, the federal government, including the Biden administration, not giving any support to help them. So here's what we do. It's so simple. Change the law so that asylum cases are actually filed in the country of origin. So let's say you're coming from El Salvador in the Northern Triangle countries. You would file your case at a consulate or an embassy. I believe we should build dormitories nearby, very inexpensive to keep people safe while their applications are being processed if they're under risk. When we adjudicate it locally, first we have people there that actually will know if it's a legitimate case. If they're approved, we escort them to the United States. And best of all, they have $10,000 per person to start their lives here, to become owners of this economy. They can open a restaurant. They can put a down payment on a place to live. And we don't have to use our existing social services to get them started. They want to work. And that's the easiest way to fix this. And in the meantime, we're doing it completely the opposite. And that would stem the wave,
Okay.
and that would stem the wave, and we could have solved both. But I'll tell you why it doesn't happen. I'll wrap up with this. There's no political courage because every single person in Washington wants to get reelected in their next election, and they know that doing the right thing will undermine their chances because of this country that has so separated and become so binary. And that's the answer.
Yeah. And it's almost as if we're steering based on what's in the rearview mirror. You look at the reason people are upset about immigration is that we had all of these jobs leaving during free trade, and now we are at the lowest unemployment of all of our collective lifetimes. The four of us, at least. I don't know how old people in the audience are. we've still got almost 2 jobs for each unemployed American. The unemployment rate is under 4 or 5% right now. I want to talk about the hardest topic for a politician to talk about, which is spending. The national debt. Now we've added about $12 trillion between the last 2 presidents. I think it was 8. Bill Ackman, maybe I could have you just sort of tee this up for us here and how concerned you are about our national debt, if you are. 8 billion, I think, under Trump. Obviously, COVID, was a bit of a wild card there, and then Biden's gone buck wild as well. I think he put 4 or 5, maybe he's at 5 or 6 trillion on top of that. How big of an issue is the national debt, and what's the if Bill Ackman was president, if you gave the plan to Dean or were on the advisory committee to say, how do we get this thing under control? What would be your plan to kind of land this plane safely?
So again, here I think I'm going to defer to Dean. I'll give you a kind of quick view on it. I think the biggest problem that we have now is that we have a Congress that sort of figures out, one, it costs them nothing, politically or otherwise, to support a bill to give money to someone. And in fact, if anything, it helps them get reelected. And so the people, the politicians are spending the country's collective future. And that's what when you're borrowing money that gets paid back in the future, you're borrowing from the next generation, giving it to the next generation. And we don't have kind of a culture of fiscal discipline in Washington. And unfortunately, we've lost people. The numbers are so large, people just sort of ignore them. In terms of 34 trillion of debt, I think the way to look at this is, it's a bit like you can't look at debt on a standalone basis. You have to compare it to the quote unquote value of the country, and the value of the country is very, very high, right? The government owns, the right to tax its citizens and tax its corporations. So it basically owns, call it 35% of SpaceX. It owns 35% of federal government, every person's sort of income, and they have the right to adjust that dial, right? So that's a very valuable asset, and plus we have enormous, real estate assets and other assets globally, et cetera. So it's an enormously valuable country, but the trend is very, very negative. And we've been, it's a bit like you've been, living in a world where your cost of money was very close to zero. You accumulate a ton of debt in that world, and then the world gets repriced at a much higher interest rate. And all of a sudden, we're going to be spending on interest pretty soon what we're spending on national defense. And that's a grave threat to the country. And there is a moment at which the bond market, we get into a bit of a death spiral. So I think that's a very frightening prospect. I asked Dean precisely this question on Friday, and I'd love for the group to hear his answer. So Dean,
thank you, Bill. And everything you just said is spot on. We have $33 trillion in debt. Just a couple of years ago, mid-21, I think the interest on that debt was about 1.5% roughly. Now it's a little over 3%, so about 150 basis point change in just a couple of years. That's going to turn out to be about if it stays, and by the way, it might even go up, it's going to be about a $400 billion incremental change to our debt service responsibility. And as Bill just said, we will not just be approaching our defense budget. We are then officially spending more on the past than we are investing in the future. There is no money left to spend at a discretionary level in the United States. And while our country, first of all, I am pro-growth, and I ultimately want to develop policies to grow our way out of this mess. It's not going to be easy. We have to become more efficient as well. And if we do so, we can actually make it happen. But in the meantime, what no one talks about, we can accommodate a little bit more debt, I think so, but nobody is talking about that debt service. To go from $400 billion a year to about $800 billion a year is a huge change and a troublesome burden for all of us. And when I become president, I have a few propositions. First, I'm going to have a bipartisan cabinet, not comprised of politicians, but of the best and brightest operators and managers in America. I don't care about politics. I care about principles, experience, and capacity to lead. I'm going to have a youth cabinet as well. That's another story. I will employ zero-based budgeting because I've never encountered an organization, institution, for-profit or non, that budgets in the manner that we do by people who can't even read a P&L or a balance sheet. We have a Pentagon budget that is approaching $1 trillion, and they cannot pass an audit. So I will engage one of the big international consulting firms to conduct a top-down assessment of every federal agency, every program, every expenditure, and make an independent proposition to me and to the Congress about how we can improve efficiency and delivery of service If we are not generating ROI on our core mission, we should eliminate it. And if there's a private enterprise that can do so better, we will outsource it. We have got to operate more efficiently. And then you all know, you guys are successful men in America. We can only match reductions in expenditures with increases in revenue if we hope to get our way out of this mess, in addition to pro-growth policies. But I don't blame people right now for not wanting to share more, because they don't believe in their government. They don't have faith in our executive leadership, and we have to do better. But as you know, gentlemen, I propose a massive change to our healthcare system, not the provision of care, that has to be private, but we're spending twice as much than any nation in the world per capita. Our outcomes are mid-pack. We're the only nation in the world that has pharmaceutical pricing like we have. We could reduce healthcare expenditures in our country and generate better outcomes by also reducing the consumption of our GDP from about 18% to about 10%. These are ways we can actually save money and generate better outcomes.
I think the zero-based budgeting technique, something which is public now. I think Elon, when you took over Twitter, maybe you could speak to the power of zero-based budgeting, and maybe Elon explain to the audience what that is and why it's important.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. You really just start with nothing and build up from there, as opposed to starting with what exists and subtracting. So, unless something is obviously useful and contributing to, in the case of Twitter X, making the product better or running the server operations, then that role shouldn't exist. And then obviously to create an incentive structure where the rate of innovation and improvement of the product is what gets people ahead, and not have the process for advancement be obtuse or backwards. We've gotten more done in a year with 20% of the personnel than Twitter had with 100% of the personnel over 5 years. So you can even see in the evolution of Spaces. I mean, we unfortunately tried to hold the Spaces, and it just broke when we, when we had the Ron DeSantis Spaces. And obviously, I'm trying to have Spaces be, as nonpartisan as possible. And so I'm glad that Dean Phillips is doing this, and you're doing it. The point is not to promote one ideology over another or one political group over another, but to provide a forum where the public can listen to candidates from a wide range of viewpoints and make their decision regarding the vote. And I'm just against anything that undermines the democratic process, and certainly getting candidates, especially popular, candidates that are quite viable, removed from ballots is taking that decision away from the public, which is fundamentally anti-democratic. That's insane. Some political parties shouldn't think that they know better than the public. And I think I also am concerned about these, the lawfare, where using the judicial system to get candidates off ballots is also no good. Let the public make their own decision. That is literally what democracy means. So,
it's pretty crazy. I will say I'm disappointed, being a former journalist. It's been a while now, 20 years, but that the press is not covering, Dean, the fact that you're being blocked from certain ballots. I did a search on Google News this morning and just was trying to find anybody covering the issue. And, I was talking to a bestie, I'll have him remain nameless right now, but he basically, just texted me like, how can you block somebody from even being on the ballot? And I'm not talking about Trump and the insurrection, cases. I'm talking specifically about you, a Democrat, being blocked from being on the ballot, and the press won't cover it, but they will cover the Trump, over and over again. So hey, Jason, what's going on in your press machine? Go ahead, Bill Ackman.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, because I wanted to make a point on this sort of bigger question, which I think is a really important one. So one, on the downside case, here's what we have to worry about. The debt accumulations happen during one of the strongest economies we've had in generations, right? And now you're set up with an enormous amount of debt, a huge deficit going into what could potentially be a recession, right? That's when now your revenues are declining, your debt is compounding, and that's a really, really bad outcome. That's why the next president, it's critically important that the next president of the country is a talented, successful business leader, because fundamentally the United States is a massive business. Now it suffers from, we've seen this on a much smaller scale in everything from railroads to restaurants to various other businesses. But a poorly run business has, tons of duplicative costs, an uninspired team, doesn't use technology effectively, the incentives are misdesigned, and there's really no culture of excellence. Unfortunately, that describes a lot of our government. But I've also learned that just putting in one new person to a dysfunctional company, you can do an incredible turnaround, because that person attracts really amazing talent if you find the right one, and then you make tremendous progress. And the appeal to me of Dean is he's a legitimately successful business person. He gets it. He's smart. He's capable, and he spent 3 terms and he's been reelected in the Congress. Understands how the government works. So you have a combination of business talent and understanding, cost control, designing incentives, leadership, charismatic leadership, which is necessary to achieve these goals, and also how does the system work? How do you break the quote unquote politics? How do you fix the culture? He has those elements, and that's what's made him a very appealing candidate to me.
I just want to make sure people understand what Bill's talking about in a crystal clear fashion. There is a website for the St. Louis Fed. It's called FRED, and you could just look up gross federal debt as a percentage of gross domestic product. Our debt to what we make. For the majority of our lifetimes, it has been between 30 and 60%. In other words, our debt to what we produce every year. The last time it broke 100%, and right now I think we're at about 120 or so, was at the end of World War II. That was the spike. It took us in that spike, from 1946 when the war ended, 45, 46, all the way to the 70s in order to work off, took 2.5 decades to work off that debt. We are now, to Bill's point, in a vibrant economy at 120%. This is the most acute issue you can think of. It's incredibly hard for politicians to take this on. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's my number one issue, Dean. And I understand we have culture wars going on right now. Trump is triggering people. Biden has got cognitive issues, the border. Above all else, if the balance sheet is broken, this whole thing can come apart. And the idea that people can get stimmy checks or unemployment, this could be cataclysmic.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, Steve Ballmer has an organization called USA Facts. I encourage people to take a look. They present the U.S. federal budget in a way that anybody in business can better understand. It's really great work. I'm not sure Joe Biden can read a P&L, a balance sheet. Donald Trump through his bankruptcies clearly can't either. And I do think it's time that we start recognizing that these are times where we should be reducing debt, because when we face another recession or crisis, it reduces the capacity to respond, to provide the stimulus necessary to get us out of it. I think we're all in agreement on this. It's nonsensical. We cannot spend $2 trillion annually more than we generate in revenue. And as one of you guys said earlier, the incentives in Congress are so perverse. Nobody is rewarded for reducing costs or generating more revenue. I've never had someone come to my office and say, please spend less on my program, or please raise my taxes so we can generate more revenue. I mean, come on, it doesn't happen for obvious reasons. And there's no courage.
So the obvious question is, how do you fix it? Okay, now you're president. Give us the first 100 days. You understand the system, you understand the broken incentives.
So here we go. I'm glad for the question. Executive leadership, the most extraordinary bipartisan cabinet in American history. Maybe we'll have a third of them on this spaces right now, by the way, guys. And then we go into a zero-based budgeting, a comprehensive assessment, attracting the best and brightest. By the way, I can't do it alone. No individual can do this alone. Has to attract extraordinary Americans. That's how we start at the executive level. I'm the second most bipartisan member of Congress, Bill, you know this. That means I work beautifully with people on both sides of the aisle. And I will work with the Republican Party to better manage our government. It is a focus of theirs. I will work with the Republican Party on national defense and security. I will work with my fellow Democrats on some of the issues of raising the foundation, healthcare, housing, education, cost of food and fuel. we can actually combine the core principles of both parties right now and do better. All of us have negotiated. You can't take everything off the table. And by the way, you got to put people on the plane at the takeoff if you want them there at the landing. And I have to tell you, this might surprise people listening, but I've received an extraordinary number of thoughtful, friendly texts and calls from my Republican colleagues in Congress saluting my effort in running for president against an established incumbent, against one's party. I cannot wait to get to work. They can't wait to get to work. The system is suffocating and stifling the very progress we need to make. And that's what happens when you have people in Congress, in the White House, who have been there for literally 50 years, guys. So that's how we start fixing it, Bill. But my call to action right now for everybody listening, in fact, is to start considering, if you're a person who's been successful, you're looking for your next endeavor, I mean it. The election's coming up in November. Inauguration Day is January 20th of 2025. We are going to need an extraordinary number of great executives, great managers, ideators, innovators, and to fundamentally change the operations of a government that is increasingly broken because of an exodus of the very people of confidence who have left in the last number of years. And Jason, I was going to answer your question really quickly about being left off ballots and it's not being reported in the news. Look, I'm staggered, you guys. One reason I'm thrilled to do this Spaces with you is to call attention to the truth that is not being reported. It is dangerous. It is despicable. But you ask why? Because the Democratic and Republican parties are private institutions. They're not public. They don't work for us. They're working against us. And I'm really sick of it. And I'm a competitor. I want to create competition from both the inside and the outside. I'm a proud Democrat, you guys, but I'm a disruptor. And there is a day coming where we need to ensure that there is competition for these two parties, because in the future, it is only going to get worse when you have the wrong people in the wrong positions working against us. And by the way, if you want to learn more about me, go to my website. Jason, he's got it down. Dean24.com.
Everybody go to Dean24.com. Just as we wrap here, I just want to say it's great to have everybody come on and have this important discussion. This is, I think, the year that the two-party system really does get challenged. I think it's thanks to places like X and Twitter, where people can speak freely. It's thanks to podcasts and alternative media channels. And the public is sick of these two parties and the choices. Say what you will about Vivek, you may like him, you may not. RFK, you may like him, you may not. But man, we are starting to see a lot more choices. And if we don't like the choices we have to fight to get more choices on the ballot. And Dean, I'm really excited that you left, being an entrepreneur and running businesses to go be of service.
Jason, hey, you know what? I'm an entrepreneur still. In fact, it's the most important entrepreneurial mission of my entire life. And so to you, JCal, to you, Bill, to you, Elon, thank you. And I need your help. I need your advocacy, and to everybody listening, I love you all. And let's get to it, and let's shock this country in November with the most massive change for the better we've ever dreamt about.
Well, thank you for coming on X Spaces, and I think people will be very glad to hear from you directly, and be surprised about some of the negative tactics that have been used against you, which are obviously inappropriate and undermine the democratic process. And I mean, to be honest, I actually had not heard of you until, well, I sort of vaguely heard your name, but I didn't know you were polling so high. I literally learned that in the last few days. And just, I mean, again, I'm saying such obvious facts that it's remarkable that one should even have to state them, but the public should have the right to pick the candidates that the public wants. That's the whole essence of democracy. Hear. And we should be against anything that undermines that, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or otherwise.
Hear, hear.
I guess if I could, I'm not the campaign manager, but I guess my suggestion would be the following. Dean's put $5 million of his own money into his campaign. I'm contributing $1 million toward his PAC, and I just, if you're contributing $10, $100, or otherwise, you like what you heard, money actually matters. It costs a lot of money in litigation and otherwise for him to get on ballots, and that's before kind of getting the word out. This is one of the most capable people I've ever met, I believe. I'm incredibly excited that he's running for president of the United States. I think the country is really fortunate. It's taking a lot of personal risk and attacks and all the other things I get used to over time. But if you like what you hear, find a way to help the guy. Dean, how can people help other than money?
Hey, thank you. Treasure is really important, but your time, your advocacy, and your invitation. I'm going to be crisscrossing the country. I've got lots of days on the calendar, showing up in a lot of states. If you send an email to me at dean@dean24.com, believe it or not, I actually see it, as does my team. If you want to help us out, you want to host a gathering to introduce me, you want to write postcards, you want to do some door knocking, tell your friends, tell your family to vote in primaries. If I could just make one final call to action, guys. The reason we've handed over the keys to the furthest right and the furthest left is because the parties don't want you to vote in primary elections. They want to coronate a candidate and then force that choice upon you. So please register to vote in your primaries, and then let me know if you want me to come to your town and do a rally, do a fundraiser, do a meet and greet, and help us out. You guys, it's all up to us. The power's in everyone's hands still. Let's keep it that way. And exactly what Elon said, the minute they start taking names off ballots, suppressing you, refusing to debate, we are in big trouble, but it's not too late. So thanks, Bill. Thanks for the shout out. And to all you guys, I think the world of you. And
actually, one more thing, if I may, it would be rude to interrupt for 1 second. Dean, one of the other things, for people to support you, they have to believe there's a credible path for you to be president. I think you made a very credible case, which convinced me. Why don't you go ahead and just share people shortly?
Hey, thanks, Bill. So here it is, guys. I'm an underdog, and I love it. And that's why we're going to succeed. We're scrappy. We're efficient. We're using 21st century technologies to do better. It starts in New Hampshire, January 23rd, just about 8 days from now, is the first primary election in the country. And if we surprise that night, it's game on. And if any of you listening have friends here, have family, want to spread the word somehow in New Hampshire to get people to come out and vote in the primary for me, mark my words, that will be the igniter for the whole campaign. Either way, I will be continuing. And my mission is to get to this summer, June, July, before the convention in Chicago, to a point where the country knows me. I got a lot of work to do to introduce myself. When they do, I can almost guarantee that the polls will continue to show Joe Biden losing to both Donald Trump and probably any other competitor, and also will show me probably beating Donald Trump and other competitors. And when that happens, Democrats will have a very simple choice. Do we coronate an unelectable candidate, or do we get behind someone who can't just win, but can actually achieve reasonable common sense solutions and actually get this country to be excited and joyful and optimistic again? That's my mission, Bill. And all of you listening, would love to have you join the Dean team, because we can do it. We absolutely can do it. And I'm not going to give up. And today's a great day. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elon, Bill, for joining us. And Dean, we thank you for running and your public service and commitment to helping solve America's problems in a reasonable fashion. We wish you the best. Everybody go to dean24.com if you want to give a donation, if you have the means to do so. If not, just tell your friends, maybe tweet about it, X about it, post about it on X. And
I'm catching. In fact, I'm catching up to Elon. I've got 40,000 followers on X, and you're only at 169 million, Elon. So I'm catching up fast. Yeah, closing fast. Thanks, everybody.
That's good. All right, thank you.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in tomorrow's episode. Thank you so much for watching.